And whoever was, okay, it's being recorded now. Okay, remember, anyone who has been before the hearing before was under oath, and you're still under oath according to the attorney. Come on, clock, one more minute.
Mr. Bernard, can you speak just to make sure that we can hear you?
I certainly can.
Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you.
You had to write it down, so you remembered it?
Just to remember that we do it.
I never did it for planning and zoning.
I have my trusty flag
Yep, see?
for anybody on Zoom.
And we'll forgive you if you don't stand, Georgette.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. First order of business is to pledge the allegiance. Here's the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag, United States
of America,
America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with liberty
liberty
and justice for all.
Okay, now there's an opportunity to present additional evidence that we haven't heard before. Is there anyone want to do that?
I mean, I think my only question would be, I did send over to the BAA some information from a research study that hopefully you all had the chance to read, that kind of talks about the appraisal process and the variances they're seeing, whether the appraisal was done pre-sale or post-sale. I found it very enlightening. Not necessarily that comes into play here, but I did, when we were seeking out appraisers to come and do an appraisal of the property, which we're waiting for our appraisal to come in. Unfortunately, they couldn't get it done before this meeting. They were actually kind of surprised at the fact that there was a belief out there that they would appraise differently, whether it was being done privately or bank. And so, I think, like I said, I think that research paper was very interesting. Hopefully you all took a chance to read it and look through it. And that at this point in time is the only thing I have.
Okay, now, Mr. Bernard, you are appealing the value of your property, and you presented a certified appraisal from Linda Fortin. Any member have any questions about that?
You went and looked at that house, didn't you?
Yeah, I went and looked at it.
Mhm. And you sent some pictures.
I did. I took pictures and I sent them out. The basement especially seems to be very damp. They run multiple dehumidifiers down there. I found the structure. I'm not into understanding how it's done, but the main room that I came into, I was told by Mrs. Bernard that it was a schoolhouse room and its original one-room construction.
Yep.
And then everything starts getting added to it and it
Right.
open. I found it was, I'm trying to rambling, I guess is the best word. Depending on where you're going and how you're getting there, it rambles. But it was a nice enough house. Did we actually get an independent appraisal or did you have the bank appraisal?
I had the one that I had sent in previously. And then we did have another one. He was not able to get out here until Monday. And so we asked him to get it as soon as possible, but he said there's likely no way he will get it before, in time for this meeting or the 24-hour pre-notice. So, we will have to see where it comes in at, and hopefully the decision here is close enough to it that we don't have to be concerned about it.
Right here?
We have the one done in August of 2020 by Catherine Heber.
Yep.
That's all we have.
Right, that's what we have.
Yep. That was the
And,
latest one that was done.
And I know that traditionally banks want to make sure they cover their behind. And they're kind of like a little more strict on how things run. So looking at that number, it was, I think it was appropriate for the time. And I think the average, in general, the average in off-lake areas in Andover rose like 13% in 2021. And so with that understanding, I'd like to take your appraisal number and factor a 13% increase. And I think that would be an appropriate appraisal approximation. Have any disagreements to that?
No, I like I said at the previous meeting, I have no doubt that the value of the property has went up. And I think that, when I was looking around, I think even the highest number I saw for, I think Connecticut, the average number was what, 18%, I think across the state I found. So
Yeah, and-
somewhere between 13 to 18%, I think would be a very valid number.
Okay. So
Wait,
who's
did I
helping
do
us
this
out?
right?
What was the original number?
405 is what the
And what's
August
the-
of
and what's the
2020.
percentage increase? that you want?
13%
13%.
increase.
Okay, times 1.1.
Make sure I did it, because I
Okay.
did it different.
So you're taking the 405 from that 2020 and adding a 15.
Oh, that's the total.
Yes.
Yeah, we're doing a
You do it
13%
easier,
uptick
right?
for 2021 from 2020.
That makes sense.
And we're coming up, and Linda and Robert are coming up with 457,
650, right?
650.
Okay.
And so based on what I looked at and based on this
And that
appraisal from 2020 and understanding the market changes and it not being a lake property, et cetera, I
Right.
think
That's
that's an
the
appropriate
assessment?
figure.
Okay.
So Linda's doing the assessment value based on our agreement on appraisal value. And Linda, what do you have?
That would be 320,355.
That's what I got too.
All right, so I mean, I would like to make a motion that we accept based on this very complete appraisal report from 2020 with a market uptick of 13%, that locating 70% of that value comes to an assessment of 320, 355, and I think that's a fair and accurate value. So I'd like
Okay.
a motion to accept it.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And since there is no disagreement, the chair will abstain. Okay? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying I'll abstain. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much. Have a good evening.
You too.
You too.
Thank you.
The chair does have the option to abstain if there's no conflict. I just thought
Yeah, that's yours.
which I found out from a prior chairperson.
Just move up. We're gonna seat Mr. Hamburger in my place for the next two.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
Closer.
Okay. No. This is going to be, we're doing Daniel's next or Alan's next? We doing Daniel's next or Alan's next?
We said Alan, and then I was going to be last, Georgette.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, well, you can come and sit over here. I said, you're up. So come and sit in front of us.
You can sit right here.
You know, you can sit anywhere you want.
Okay. I'm under oath, I understand that, and all I'm gonna do for the board is just state for the record that I had an independent appraisal done by a Connecticut certified appraiser who lives in Hebron. And the appraisal was 432,000, making the assessment 302 even, 302,000. And I truly believe that the 432 strongly represents the house because it is a 1930 home. And the septic is not even on file. So it's a detriment. It's working, and so it counts, but it's going to fail in the near future, and it's going to be extremely expensive to maintain a new system because I have to drill a new well as well. So I'm saying that 432 is a very fair appraisal of my property.
Alan, I have one question. You said the assessment comes to 302,000 even. It's 302,400.
But someone do the numbers for me?
432 times
70%.
0.7 is 302,400.
Okay, I stand corrected.
That's the only challenge I have. Thank you. Okay, anyone want to make a motion before we do the discussion?
I'll make a motion that we assess this property at 302,400.
Or the assessment, yes.
Yes, I said that right.
Okay. Second,
I'll second it.
okay. Is there any discussion?
So I did, me being the new guy here,
Yeah.
I did a bunch of research on this. You know, I watched the video of the prior hearing back in February to see the detailed presentation that Mr. Roy made and examined his analysis of the land value and his belief of why the land was overvalued because it's a sloping property and the average for the lake. I just want to point out that averages can be misleading. It isn't necessarily a good way to analyze building properties because you start out once you have an approved lot with a certain value, whether it's 0.1 acres or 0.4 acres, you know, you're going to start out at 100,000 or 150,000. You're going to go up from there. And averages can be misleading because of that. And also, if somebody has a subdividable lot, you know, on a per acre basis, that lot is going to be worth a whole lot more than a non-subdividable lot. I'm not really saying anything that you don't already know, I think. And, you know, if the lot has ledge on it or if it has wetlands and, you know, there's a whole bunch of things. So averages can be misleading. And also in some of the prior cases that we've heard, and just like the previous one, we really didn't take into account what the assessor, you know, we kind of dismissed, quite frankly, what the assessor said, and merely took the appraisal as the gospel, really, you know, without evaluating at all. Now, it would certainly help if the town assessor was here so that we could ask him questions about how we arrived at the values that he did, but he hasn't. And, you know, frankly, I was ready to try to find some value in between, quite frankly, what your appraisal was and what the assessor came up with, until you mentioned the bit about the septic system. Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it's not even on file.
Yeah, well, it's not on file. You're in the Lake District. So not only are you going to have to put in something that conforms to the current health codes, you're going to have to do all the abatement stuff that has been added. And that's going to, you know, that's going to cost you also.
I know.
So, you know, considering that, I'm pretty good. I'm good with just got moved, you know, because the existing value is reduced by that much more having a failing septic system.
Right.
And that's, maybe I didn't recall it, but I didn't see that anywhere in anything that we're talking about. So, you know, like I said, I was looking at, on the one hand, the value that the appraisal gives, on the other hand, the assessment, and trying to find some calculus for finding a happy medium. But the happy medium, I think, is down at the bottom because of your failing septic system.
I appreciate the recognition of that.
I want you to know my thought processes. So that's what I have to say at this point.
Okay, any more discussion?
So just real quick, the motion on the table is to set the assessed value to $302,400, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? And I will abstain. Thank you very much. The motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roy.
And now, Daniel, you're up.
Okay, thank you. I also understand from the oath I took from the first meeting, this is a continuation. I'm still under oath.
Mhm.
And Bob, I think I heard you correctly. You were able to watch the previous video. You probably have the analysis I did on my property, which is 332, 2 houses over.
Mhm.
And I also submitted a certified appraisal, and I'll kind of just do the summary. When I presented before, which was both Linda and Georgette, my means of looking at my 82% increase, knowing that land values come up, I agreed, was to me a large stretch. Obviously, I wanted to do my homework on what was going on. So what I assembled there is an analysis both around the lake area, then the overall town, and then doing research on what the statute is and what a mass evaluation that the towns do, and then how, when it goes to court, if you fight it, what has to be per the statute fair market value. The only way that is recognized is what you were just talking about, going to get a certified appraiser. Matter of fact, I'll add additional information since we last met when I got to go review some of the court cases that were previously brought for town of Andover and some of the comments that are in that document where it was considered, including with the assessor for the town of Andover, that process is an opinion because it's a mass calculation that they then adjust to. The only way you can go down to per individual house is to get market value. And when you do an assessment, the best one to use is market versus cost or income. There's 3 different types you can do. And so I knew that even though I wrote that whole report and had my opinion on having just recently built that house and knowing the cost, that wasn't still going to be the value that what was in the market. So the reason I paid and brought that forth is that's what's recognized. So before I told Georgette and Linda is that puts me at a 60% increase, which is still on the very high end on the lake values of increases. But I have to accept that as the results of what the market value would be. So what was outstanding the last time we talked was I knew there was a bunch of appraisals coming in as part of the appeal process. They were going to be looked at, making sure there was no gaps to how they were done. I walked through mine. You saw that on the video, what I mentioned, including like for quality of the house, etc. The new information, when I went back to research previous cases, what was interesting to me is the way the system works with a house grade is there's only 4 ways to adjust the value of a house coming out of the mass appeal. And John Chaponis mentioned this in the last court case. The first option is an assessor can go in and just override the value and say, I think your house is worth X and just put it in. He talked about that. That is not probably the way to do it, because if you think the house is valued more, you should say the land's valued more, the grade is greater, etc. And when you adjust those, they become a multiplying factor to tell your house why the value that I was being assessed currently was so high. It also brings it to bear why it was an A++. So when I talked to Vision Government Service as part of my hearing, and I asked Mimi Mackey, what is the grade factor? What is that supposed to be used in your system? Talking as a company, what does grades do? And it's bared out in the previous court case. It's just a multiplier. And the comment she made to me is a town can elect the amount of grades they want to use for the population of the dwellings and the houses they have and the quality they have to be fair to help adjust for the market. So what that means on a scale of 10, C minus C, C plus, B minus B, B plus, A minus A plus, A++, that covers the full range. And the comment was, we do not normally see a town like Andover having to use the full range or the high range, but that's their selection. Well, what that offers up is that if you take a house of mine on square footage and you saw my calculation you put in, it's going to flag as overpriced within the system unless I put a multiplier. And the way you can do the two multipliers for new construction is add land value up and grade up to make that okay. And that's what was done in this case. My house is adjusted as an A++, not because of the building quality in the checklist, which is the standard, but John having a fixed price and wanting to get to that market value, what he believes is the cost. So right, wrong, and different, when he adjusts that and pops that price out, I look at it and saying, I don't need that quality. That's why I was telling Georgette and Linda last time, with the standards I have, I'm not superior quality. So it's not really using the checklist. And so John uses that as a way to try to justify the higher price. The only way I can come in as a homeowner and challenge it is what is the price? So again, it comes back to the certified person looking at current market. Georgette, I know you sent me an email saying, why didn't I use houses all on the lake in that? Well, as Linda Fortney explained to me, that would actually go in more in my favor, and she would be unjust doing that. She would take my house, which is more of a higher end house to the lake, and back it down to lower grade ones, and the amount of deduction they would have, it would have dropped my price. So she kept me high, both the properties, the two properties she chose on Andover Lake, and then waterfront property in the surrounding area. So even though it would have been in my favor to use additional sales around the lake that were lower quality or prices not going to be as high, she had, by her certification, to find what she thought was existing market value houses, meaning houses that were on lakes that were quality enough that would come more into a price range. And so all the comparables that are on my appraisal from Linda all map to that end. So the 765 comes into her for what was being sold for the type of value of my home to be adjusted to the 765. The other thing that stood out in which was balanced between some of the judge and the court case is once you get to the point of saying what's market value, it's more of an exact science to get a certified person to go through all of that process than what's coming out of a mass town appraisals or assessment. That is considered opinion. John Chaponis backed that up during the testimony. It is opinion because it's just a calculation that draws out. That's where he had a lot of discussion. He then goes around and can make adjustments for all the different properties. What I thought was the biggest disparity to me, more of a global, is the lake seems to have paid the burden of a lot of the output of this being the increase versus the rest of the town. So if you look at the grade on really nice homes in other areas, the highest I could find was a B+. Well, the reason being you don't have to adjust it for the multiplier because the price of the house is valued less. So that's kind of the whole analysis report, Bob, just for your benefit, that was my first approach to try to figure it out. But when it comes down to, if you're going to ask what the statute says, it's fair market value and what's accepted. If I go to court and Ando were to go to court, they would have to pay for a legal, independent, certified appraisal similar to what Linda presented. And the last thing I would say is just understanding some of the previous meetings that taken place, and since there was no pushback, I think there's like 6 or 7 that have been accepted. So I don't think I would be the outlier if you accept the 765 as the true value of my property at 332 Lake Road. Again, that's a 60% increase. I think, Georgette, when you wrote me the email that says that's the price of being on the lake, the higher end, and I mentioned yours was an 18% increase. The difference between 82 to 60 is still hard to swallow. I think it's a fair market that I have to accept as a taxpayer. That's the value of my house. But there is big disparities within the process of what people, had to get as a difference. And so for me, the fair value, which I told you last time, is acceptable of taking Linda's work and saying that's what it is today. So that's kind of my presentation of the update, and I'll leave it for questions.
All right, well, the thing that I did comment was that where you are on that side of the lake is the preferred side of the lake because the water is deep. On my side, you cannot go swimming. You could put a boat in and then go out somewhere where it's deep and swim that way. This side of the lake is a lot different. Some of it, as you go along around the cove areas, they're swampy. They've all filled in by eutrophication. So there's various areas in the lake that are not as desirable, but luckily you and your brother and people on that side have the better part of Andover Lake. And that's all I was saying as far
And
as.
that was brought up in some of the previous cases when you read those
Right.
transcripts, and the judge said it's the view of the lake and the land that is being assessed, not the use of the lake. And the lake is actually owned by the Lake Association, not the owner. So whatever the conditions are is not part of the property owner's purview as far as what part of the lake they can use. Meaning people can go to the beach, they can go to get the access through the Alpella and enjoy the lake. But what's the value is a lake view, not a lake use.
When you go to sell your property, if you cannot swim in front of your house because it's all swamp, you're not going to get as much money for your house as if you could just go to the edge of the water and get in the water and swim. So
Hey, let me ask a question here. This idea of the quality of the lake that abuts the house, is that taken into consideration in our assessment or in this appraisal? Does that information show up in any of these documents?
not that I know of.
No. And
Then it's not
and what I
relevant.
was, yeah,
Then it's not
that's what-
relevant to this discussion.
Correct. And that's what, Bob, I was saying, that's what, when it was brought up with the previous appraisal by the town in front of the judge, and the last time it was fought, the same thing the judge said. It's not about the use of the lake. It's a Lakeview property that gives it the value for the landowner. And that's what was considered in Linda's appraisal, is what would my house sell for, where it sits, part of the lake, what the house is, et cetera.
Right. If there were a dock on the lake, that might have some sway, because again, that's utility. That's something that you can see. I'm looking at the pictures. You don't have a dock, do you?
No.
Okay. So again, I'm the newcomer to all this, and I took a long, hard look at all of this. And again, I'm kind of, the quandary here is that on the one hand, we have a certified appraisal from somebody who's been doing this for however many decades. And on the other side, we have Vision Services and Mr. Chaponis, who's done this also for decades. So we have what should be considered credible values that disagree with one another. And really the issue is, how do we find out, which one is more true? How do we reconcile differences between these? And, we'd like to think that a certified appraisal is, as the attorneys say, it carries a lot of weight. But there's an old joke that comes to mind, which is that, may your insurance man and your tax man never meet each other. And what it means is that you can make an appraisal come out pretty much any way you want, depending on the comparable properties that you choose. There's a lot of subjective evaluation in that. If you're trying to get an appraisal for sale, it's not going to come up with the same number as an appraisal for tax purposes or for insurance purposes. So I have to I have to look at that, take it with a little bit of grain of salt. And like I say, Chaponis and Vision don't just pull numbers out of thin air either. And so how do we reconcile the $100,000 difference between these two numbers? You can't say one is completely correct and the other isn't. So,
well, to be clear on that, from the court end, if I was to go to court and challenge it, the town would have to pay for another independent appraisal certified. They will not use that assessment that Massa and John's input. That is not considered an actual value for fair market. It's considered what the courts called an opinion, because it's just a mass calculation that's then adjusted. And when I read the transcript for the last case, which was the Robert Hunt case, even John under testimony agreed to the attorney for the town attorney it is considered opinion because it's just a large calculation. It calculates by square foot. It gives you margin for calculation on grades, and it just plots it out. Now, what John then is supposed to do is go around and adjust. And so my comment in the last meeting was, even when he came in on January 31st to talk to the board members and said, yeah, we know the lake went up 43 with a high of 70. Well, that is not correct. I know I went up 82%. And so the number that you're saying is his work is a mass calculation with adjustments that can't be used in court. They would have to have a certified appraisal against Linda's certified appraisal. And then they would weigh that difference between what the two come out with. So they can't even use that other number that you're seeing that the town produces. It doesn't meet the statute of a fair market value. An assessor is not equal to an appraiser from licensing. And so that's why the town would be forced to go get an independent appraisal, not another independent assessor.
I was told by the town attorney that in a court case, the town doesn't always use an independent appraisal. I don't know how true that is, but that's what he said. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know. I'm just telling you what he said. They might rely on the court.
The numbers here. if that's what
Yeah, and all I'm saying, Georgia, for what I read is because they have to use for the statute fair market value, what the law allows is a certified person for that state that knows that area to do the calculation. And that's why it carries weight, that unless you find a flaw with it at that moment in time. The other thing, Bob, if you look at the town of Andover, the numbers that come out, they fall short of market value. Most towns, when you read, go anywhere between 90 to 75% because they don't want to be right up against. They don't want to say Bob's house, Linda's house is all exactly where it would sell today. It actually calculates out with some amount of margin close by throwing in recent sales and doing the calculation. That's where I was saying my square footage, it was way out of whack for even if I went to rebuild. And the only way you can justify in the vision system not to have the algorithm trip or flag is to put in a multiplier that says, well, the reason that house is worth so much per square foot, it's an A++, which I argued it is not. And that's the only way I can clear the algorithm to still stay within the bounds of the system. So I'm on the high end. This is the type of cases to go in front of appeal saying, why does it sit as an outlier? And the only way I can prove it is go get a certified appraisal, not an assessment of what's the market, and then accept it.
Linda?
Well, my only thought is that every single person that's come before us so far with a certified appraisal, we have gone with that appraisal. So to me, it only seems the fair thing to do, to be fair to everybody who has come before us with an appraisal.
I don't know.
I can't single him out from
Yeah.
everybody else who's come with.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's fair, if it's right, or if it's wrong.
I know.
You know, I'm the new guy, like I said, and frankly, I'm at a loss really to weigh fully in one direction or fully in another direction. I don't know that the prior cases that have come before us where you've just said, okay, the assessment is it. I don't know whether that's correct or not. Okay, so whether we're being equitable or fair is,
I know.
yeah.
Well, if someone wants to make a motion, then
I would say I will make a motion to go with an assessment of 535, 500, which I believe is the 70% of the 765.
We have a second? Okay, no second, so the motion doesn't pass. Want to find like a figure in between the two values to lower it, but not a whole $100,000.
Well, I
Actually,
guess,
75,000.
I guess my question is what Linda just pointed out, if the previous comment, Georgette, that we left is from the attorney, if there's no issues with the actual appraisals that were conducted and all of but mine is not being accepted value, why is that? What did I
Probably
not do
because-
that the others did to get what fair market value is by a process and agree to that number, which was higher than I thought what my house was, but I accepted. I don't
Yeah.
understand why it's
It
not
might-
acceptable.
Well, it might be because yours was such a large amount, you know,
My-
that's
my-
over $100,000. Whereas the others were less.
But my house in 1 year went assessed 82% greater. That's why I'm saying it's an outlier to the high side.
Mhm.
Find me another A++ in the entire town of Andover. I was unable to find one, nor was Vision able to find one. Which Bob, an A++ from Vision is a customized custom house, which they normally find down like on shorelines. That is the discrepancy I'm trying to alert the board to is I'm an outliner because I've been cranked up to make sure that price fits in, but it doesn't. The 765 is what fits in by market value by a paid appraisal, which the others, whether the value is higher, is just because of the percentage I'm off. If a 400,000 house was lower, it's going to be a lower amount from the percentage it was off.
Oh, you need my calculator?
Yeah.
Red?
Yeah, you know,
It's
which one is it?
oh, just hit the counter.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm saying A++. Story. I don't know why they made it A++. I can't explain that. We could try lowering the value, but not the whole 100,000.
All right, I'd like to make a suggestion.
Okay,
You know, I'm not going to be King Solomon and split the baby here. But I think I would lean more towards Mr. Roy's end than towards the assessor end. I'd go like a 60-40 kind of approach, which would be the assessed market value was 873,400.
that's the appraised amount.
The appraisal,
That's fine.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Mr. Roy's appraisal was 765,
right.
a difference of 108,400.
Mhm.
I took 40% of that difference. That's 43,360. So I'm going to propose that we add that 40% difference to the 765. That gives us 808,360 as a new market value. So it's higher than his paid appraisal, it's lower than, and it leans, it's more than 50% of the way towards his end. It leans in his favor. It's not 50-50, it's a 60-40.
Okay. You want to make a motion for that?
Yeah, well, let me just come up with the assessed value based on that. So 808,360 times 0.7 would be 565,852. It's the assessed value.
Right, 565,852. Okay.
Okay, So I'm going to make a motion that we reduce Mr. Roy's assessed value from what we have on record, which is 611,380 to 565,852.
Okay. Linda, do you
What
want
was- Robert, what was the first number you chose? What was the first number?
Where do you, I spoke,
So the
a-
motion was to reduce the assessment, the assessed value from what value?
611, is that what he's talking about?
yes, it's
611,380
611,380
to 565.
to 565,852.
To
And-
565,382.
852.
852.
Got it. Sorry.
Okay, so I made that motion and,
I'll second it.
okay. Do we have any further discussion?
I need you to state for the record, Bob, that what Linda pointed out, the reason you're not accepting the value of the appraisal as written, as provided, like the others that went to the town in the appeals process, is what? If you
You have-
know all the other appraisals values, set market value, if I go to court and go in front of a judge and say, the town of Andover accepted all of these except for mine and tried to adjust it, what is your basis?
I had nothing to do with those other decisions. I
He
can't
doesn't-
guess
doesn't-
why they, what rationale they used. To me, it looks like they completely disregarded the assessed value and just went with the appraised value.
Well,
And
I think they followed the statute, which says you have to establish a market value, and a mass appraisal by the town is not that. And the only thing the court would accept is a certified appraisal. So they accepted certified appraisals because that's what the statute accepts. I just want to know why your opinion is not accepting that, if that's what the statute is for fair market value, a certified appraisal, not a mass assessment.
I think you have to bear in mind that a certified appraisal is paid for by you or whoever. And so there could be a little bias there. I'm not saying there is.
You've
But-
got to read Linda's license statement in the appraisal that are in front of you.
I understand all that, but you have to understand that the motion was made to do that and it wasn't seconded, so it didn't get accepted. So we're trying to find an alternative to give you some relief without, jeopardizing anything, but the first motion wasn't seconded, so it didn't go. And
And
so
I'm
we're
just trying to get-
find an alternative.
And I'm just trying to get that on record to the why. That's all, George.
Well, it isn't necessarily, a person doesn't necessarily have to tell you why they're making a certain motion. The first one didn't pass. And so we're trying to find an alternative and be fair. If you're not going to accept anything except all or nothing, there's nothing we can do to please you. But if you're
No,
willing
you can
to
do your vote, but I just have to make a decision whether that's a fair way to be treated compared to the other cases.
Well, your house
Okay,
was
okay.
valued higher.
Mr. Roy, I'm withdrawing my motion.
Now what?
We're deadlocked,
Linda, any comments?
which means that the original appraisal assessment stands. You're free to take this to court.
That means that you will either accept what the town says or you have to go to court.
Understand?
So no adjustment was made unless you want to give in and accept what the board is ready to give you.
Okay.
Have you made a decision? Daniel?
Oh, Linda, did you have any other further comments?
No, I looked like you were asking somebody for what to do.
No, I was asking my wife. She was listening on the conversation.
That's what I figured.
It will also cost you to go to court, so.
Cost the town too. You're spending the town's money for the lawyer and the appraisal.
Well, when we reduce all of these assessments, it also costs the town money. So it's kind of a wash, but you have to decide if you'd be willing to accept less than 100% or we deadlock and you go to court.
We could reintroduce that motion and we can pass it. You could still go to court.
True.
Okay, do that then.
Okay, well, you want to reintroduce the motion, Bob?
Okay,
So do you want me to read out the motion that was made previously?
please.
Yes.
The motion was to reduce the assessed value from 611,380 to an assessed value of 565,852.
Linda, do you want a second again?
Yes, I'll second it again.
Okay, now, all in favor signify by saying aye,
Aye.
and I will abstain. And so the motion passes, and now, Daniel, you are free to either accept that or go to court, okay? And thank you
Okay.
for coming to us.
Yep.
All right, so I think with that, our meeting is, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bob, thank you very much for assisting us with this, and Alan and Linda, thank you so much for carrying on in my absence.
And nice seeing you.
It's nice seeing me here too. Being away from home was not fun. So thank you very much, and I'll see you all in the fall when we do the motor vehicle, okay?
Okay,
Have a good summer.
thank you.
and,
You
Stay
too.
safe. Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Meeting is adjourned at 6:46.